Krista, are you able to update us on meeting start time? I see that she's here.
We're just waiting for the chair to join. So as soon as she's on, we'll be able to begin the meeting.
Okay, do you have a time estimate for that, Krista?
No, unfortunately, I don't. She'll be on as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you, that's helpful.
appreciate everyone's patience. We are hoping to start in the next few minutes, so please stand by. Thank you.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Carol Ann, are you on the call? Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I would like to call the special meeting of the Ottawa Police Services Board to order for February 15th, 2022. On behalf of the board, let me start by apologizing for the delayed start to our board meeting today. It has been a very busy day. I want to start also by recognizing that Ottawa is located on the unceded territory of the Algonquin-Anishinaabe Host Nation. The peoples of the Algonquin-Anishinaabe Nation have lived on this territory for millennia. Their culture and their presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. The Ottawa Police Services Board honors the peoples and the land of the Algonquin-Anishinaabe Nation. Today, Ottawa is home to approximately 40,000 First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. Ottawa's Indigenous community is diverse, representing many nations, languages, and customs. The Ottawa Police Services Board honors all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people and their valuable past and present contributions to this land. We are currently broadcasting on Zoom and live streaming on YouTube. Given this meeting is being held electronically, I want to caution that there is the possibility of technical difficulties. Should we receive any disruptions, I would ask that everyone remain patient as we work to fix the issues and resume the meeting as soon as possible. We have set aside an hour for the public meeting. I would ask all panelists to do their best to be concise in either their questions or comments to ensure we can stay within our timelines. I will now proceed with the confirmation of the agenda. The police service has a late addition they wish to add for the board's consideration, and that is the approval of 2 special constable appointments for Carleton University. Since these appointments do not relate to the ongoing demonstrations, I do not have the delegated authority to approve them. I am looking to add this item to the agenda with the board's consent. Per our procedure bylaw, any matter which was not set forth in the notice calling the special meeting requires the consent recorded in the minutes of all members of the board present and voting. Does the board consent to the addition of this agenda item? Carried?
Consent.
Carried.
Okay, thank you for that. So that the Ottawa Police Services Board confirmed the agenda for February 15th, 2022. Is the amended agenda confirmed?
Confirmed.
Confirmed.
Declaration of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing none. Item number 1, briefing on Enhanced Integrated Command Center. On behalf of the Ottawa Police Services Board, I am announcing that today, Chief Peter Slowly and the Ottawa Police Services Board reached a mutually agreeable separation, and as such, Chief Peter Slowly is no longer employed with the Ottawa Police Service. We thank Chief Slowly for his service to the City of Ottawa. As this is a labor relations matter, no further comment will be made. Deputy Chief Steve Bell will be the interim chief until further notice. The board is already at work to put in place a new command structure and will be appointing a new chief very soon. The board's priority is to ensure a plan is put in place to bring about a peaceful end to the occupation of our city. As expeditiously as possible. The Integrated Command Center, which includes our RCMP and OPP partners, will continue to operate. The first item on the agenda today is a briefing on the Enhanced Integrated Command Center. I've asked the service to provide an update specifically on this new command center and how it will impact the service's resource requirements, command structure, and decision-making moving forward. I am happy to see the RCMP and the OPP at the table because, frankly, the response to this crisis so far has been ineffective at bringing this occupation to an end and restoring peace and security in Ottawa. The OPS has been unable to adequately enforce our laws, and our residents continue to be terrorized. It isn't good enough. Last week, the OPS sent a clear message to the occupiers to expect a strong police response to illegal activity. On the weekend, there were more street parties equipped with stages, big screens and sound systems, hot tubs, and an outdoor gym were erected. Today, we have more trucks lined up on Parliament Hill than we had yesterday. Like other residents in Ottawa, I have watched in disbelief as this carnival of chaos has been allowed to continue. While I appreciate that resource constraints have been a big limitation, it's both puzzling and frustrating to that the OPS has been unable to do more with the current resources, and I know resources have been a huge issue. Interim Chief Bell, I would turn this over to you to introduce, and once the presentation is over, we will go to questions from board members. So over to you, Interim Chief Bell.
Thank you, Chair Deans. It's been a challenging day for the board. It's been a challenging day for the service, and I'd like to start by thanking Chief Slowly for his service to the Ottawa Police Service and to the community. The unlawful occupation has been a tremendous stress on our community, everyone that lives in Ottawa, and has brought on unprecedented challenges to both the police service and the city as a whole. I know it's been tough. I know it continues to be tough, but I'm confident that we've reached a turning point. With the new resources that we've seen flowing in from our policing partners, the new tools that both the province and federal government have put in place, and our new integrated command center that you're going to hear more about today, I believe we now have the resources and partners to bring a safe end to this occupation. The Ottawa Police are ready, eager to do what is our part. With new leadership and stability from our command team, I'm confident that we can end this occupation. We look forward to continually working with the OPP and RCMP to restore law and order in the city of Ottawa. I'll now turn it over to Deputy Chief Trish Ferguson for an update on our current efforts.
Thank you, Interim Chief Bell. Good afternoon, Chair, members of the board. I want to thank you for the opportunity to provide you with an update on the demonstration and some salient details today. As has been the case following every weekend to date, the number of demonstrators and vehicles in the downtown core has dissipated. The number of demonstrators was less than 150 in the overnight hours, and the numbers of vehicles in the core has declined to approximately 360. This is down substantially from the beginning of the demonstration, where there were over 4,000 vehicles in the downtown core. And it is lower relative to all other periods of the demonstration as well. The overall footprint of the demonstration remains more or less the same, though a small number of trucks have been relocated from residential areas of the downtown core to Wellington Street in front of Parliament. This was an outcome of negotiations that occurred between the mayor and some of the demonstrators, and it is hoped that this outcome will help to limit negative impacts being faced by the downtown residents. As of this morning, there are 172 active criminal investigations. We have laid 33 charges and made 18 arrests. And with bylaws help, we have handed out nearly 3,000 tickets. We appreciate that the community wants us to increase our enforcement actions, though as we have said from the beginning, we are managing security and safety throughout. What this means is that we're not always in a position to lay a charge or ticket on an individual due to a specific security or safety concern at the time. It doesn't mean it cannot be done at a later stage by different means of service. We continue to actively collect evidence, information, and intelligence, and we'll be working with our municipal, provincial, and federal partners in ensuring that there are consequences in the days, weeks, and months ahead. Realistically, this means that our many investigative teams will be doing months of follow-up work with investigation in order to lay charges when warranted, regardless of where an individual resides. On the issue of the Incident Command Center, as has widely been reported, the OPS, the OPP, and the RCMP have moved to stand up the Incident Command Center. This center, led by the Ottawa Police, will allow us to leverage a proven and structured framework when conducting our operations, required given the complexities and intricacies of the continuing situation. The ICC will allow for the oversight and coordination of planning and logistical supports and experts who continue to arrive from across the country. These experts carry with them a great level of knowledge and experience in responding to such protracted demonstrations and will be critical to intentional, scaled, intelligence-informed actions as we move forward. In all cases, and all actions and decisions taken will be measured, made in consideration of all possible factors and outcomes, regularly evaluated for positive and negative impacts, and adjusted as needed. Finally, the ICC will aid in providing of strategic communications to all parties, including members of the public, the media, and our policing partners. As for the enforcement of recent orders, during the last few days, a number of emergency orders and actions have been taken at the local, provincial, and federal levels. These orders are helpful. We welcome them, but must be fully understood prior to application to ensure that they can be used effectively and as intended. In the case of the federal invocation of the Emergencies Act, we continue to await for official details before operationalizing it. We have been working with our legal team and those of our provincial and federal partners to understand the implications of the various orders and actions and consider the impacts on our ultimate mission. This work has been continuing during a time of high fluidity, and so we have taken the necessary time to understand additional powers in the current context and communicate this to our members. That said, we certainly have more tools in our toolbox today than we did when this demonstration started. And we will look at how we can best address them and use them to deal with public safety and security concerns. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. We'll start with questions from Member Nerman.
Thank you, Chair. So, Acting Chief Bell, you have been part of the command team during the current crisis, which is ongoing. So I have a few questions, and I hope you can enlighten me on that. So we are on the 19 days into this illegal occupation. Do you think the residents of Ottawa are currently being provided with adequate and effective police services?
Thank you for your question, Member Nerman. So from a legislative requirement or responsibility, absolutely. I do believe that we are providing adequate and effective policing. And I think based on the communication and partnerships we have with the OPP and the RCMP, we are increasing and improving our police service provision on a day-by-day basis. The geography of the occupation has shrunk over the last number of days. We continue to work on ensuring safety and security within the neighborhoods, because it is the neighboring residents who have been most impacted detrimentally through lack of feelings of safety and security within where they live that we've really been focused on. So for the last 2 weeks, we've absolutely been focused on putting resources into those neighborhoods while we continue to work with the illegal occupiers to leave our city. The assistance we've been provided by the RCMP and the OPP has been absolutely invaluable in helping us to develop and deliver a plan that you heard at a high level Deputy Chief Ferguson lay out, so that we can engage with the communities around the occupied area to ensure increased safety and security, and continue to work with the occupiers to ultimately have them leave the city.
Thank you, Deputy Bell. My next question is, our Ottawa residents who have given on the police are now taking to the streets in large groups to confront and expel our illegal occupiers. Do you see this type of action as an indicator of a failure to provide adequate and effective police services? I've said from the beginning, I absolutely have an immense amount of compassion for the members of our community who are so detrimentally affected by this occupation. We've called on people to not engage in counter demonstrations, not because we don't have sympathy with them for what is occurring in and around them, but because we're worried about safety concerns. We continue to call for people to be not engaged in counter protests while we apply our resources to remove the occupiers from our city streets. So although I deeply feel for the strain and stress that has been placed on our city's residents, they need to know that we are working in ourselves and with our partners to put a timely and effective end to this.
Thank you. My next follow-up is, is there a current plan to bring an end to this illegal occupation? I'm not asking what the plan is, only asking whether a plan exists. And if so, did OPP and RCMP contribute to that plan? And have they agreed to your plan of action, since OPS is a lead agency on that?
So thank you for the question. And you're quite right in stating that we can't provide any plan that we would be engaged in. What I can let you know is, and I'd like to thank Commissioner Lucky and Commissioner Karik. They've sent some of their best people who have been involved in this type of incident in other jurisdictions to Ottawa to support our teams in developing the plan. I can absolutely assure you that we do have a plan to end this illegal occupation in our streets, and we continue to work with them to finalize, resource, and implement that plan and remove the illegal activities from the city.
Thank you, Deputy. And my final concern, during the first emergency board meeting, which was held on February the 5th, I asked former Chief Slowly, yourself, and the planning acting deputy Trish Ferguson about the blockades, and highlighted the decision of the Supreme Court of Canada in Clayton case. We discussed at length the powers of the police in common law for putting the blockades, and I also further asked whether there was any planning or intelligence failure on the part of the OPS. Now, after the convoy provided advance notice of their intentions, why were occupiers permitted to gain access to the downtown core? And specifically on day 3 of this convoy, the OPS said that they had no right to put up the roadblocks to restrict movements of convoy into the city. Do you stand by that view? Do you now agree that the police do have the power to put the roadblocks in place where appropriate? And finally,
I'm sorry.
Sorry, go ahead. That's
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, member. Let me finish the question though.
And the final is, do you have an explanation why and how you did not know that at the start of the convoy, and especially on day 3?
So thank you for the question, and my apologies again for intervening in it. So as we outlined in the previous board meetings, we approached this demonstration in the early days based on the intelligence that we were receiving and based on the history and unfolding of prior demonstrations that we'd seen within our downtown core. Although we completely support, and I know that there's been a motion made at council to ensure that there's a review done on this, we will actively participate in that to look at lessons learned and how we can refine how something like this would unfold in the future. We continue to work with our legal experts. We continue to work with our Crown Attorney's Office to exercise absolutely every lawful authority we have to end this occupation. As we go through it, there's lessons to be learned. There is no doubt in my mind. We will learn those lessons, but I would like to focus on those once we have these illegal demonstrators out of our streets, out of our city, and our residents own their city again.
Thank you. Just follow up. I just want to know, do you agree that the police have the powers to put the roadblocks in place where appropriate? Even at the commencement of the convoy, in the middle, and even now. Do you agree with me, with your position or not?
So Member Nerman, as I indicated, we will continue to use every lawful method that we have in order to remove the demonstrators from our streets. What we did on the first days and what we can do now, we will use our legal authorities to make sure that we don't allow more people to enter our downtown core and that we remove them as expeditiously and quickly and safely as possible.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Those were my questions.
Thank you, Member Nerman. Member Sweda.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say that I'm saddened to hear about Chief Slowly, and I want to thank him from the bottom of my heart for all of his service to the city. Acting Chief Bell, from the beginning, there's been a lack of resources and manpower. Is anything changing now? Do we have more resources coming? And if so, when and how many?
So thank you very much for the question. I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Chief Ferguson to talk about the resources that are coming in, but I'll again reiterate the support that we've gotten from the RCMP and the OPP that has been continually building over the last week has been invaluable in us to get to a position where we are right now, where we believe we're at a turning point in this demonstration. So I will turn it over to Deputy Chief Ferguson to outline some of the resources that we've received and some of the planning that we've been engaged in.
Thank you. And thank you, Member Swader, for the question. As you know, the ask was put out about a week ago now for up to 1,800 members from across a number of services, and we have received incredible demand or incredible response from our demand. And I will say, echo Deputy Bell's comments about the fact that, you know, the OPP and the RCMP have provided a wonderful amount of people, and not just numbers, but skills that we were lacking or that we needed to round out our team to make it as strong as possible. And I feel we are there now. We had provided them with 3 different levels of staffing that we were hoping to achieve. One of them being just strictly for maintenance. The other was to be able to improve our posture and actually target some of the activities that we spoke about in our surge and contain. And then the final one was for, you know, what we would have as an actions scenario. So 3 different layers of staff. And I think we are confident now and in this integrated command center, able to determine what level of staffing we need for each of those things.
Okay, so, I mean, at one point, I know the province was suggesting, I think they were mentioning 1,500 resources. Do we actually have those right now? Like, is 1,500 here, or is it a percentage of that 1,500?
So it's a bit of a complicated factor because we're talking about 24-hour coverage. So, and we need to make sure that people are rotated through and have rest. So there are times when it's scaled up. On the weekends, we have asked to have, you know, an increased number of staff. And we choose days carefully to make sure that folks are getting the rest that they need to be able to maintain our level and increase where we can. So I know it's not a hard and fast exact number for you right now, but it's also not a wise thing to provide exact numbers when we're talking about posture for security and safety. Suffice to say that we have had a very satisfactory and good response to our ask.
Yeah. So, and what I'll add to that is where Trish left off. What we've seen over the past week is a steady and increasing transfer and application of resources by both the RCMP and the OPP to our efforts in the city. We're very happy with the results that we have in terms of our call for resources, call by the board, Chair Deans, and City Council to have more resources available to us, and the reception of that. So again, I can't thank Commissioner Lucky and Commissioner Creek enough for not only the expertise that they've helped provide us, but the resources in terms of sworn members that they have provided us and continue to indicate they will increase over the days ahead.
Okay. And also, I want to thank you as well, Acting Chief, for stepping up and filling the role. I know it's been tough on everybody. And just one more question, maybe this is to CAO Dunker. Are we still okay with our financial resources that have been promised by the other levels of government?
We're certainly tracking everything we're spending related to this occupation. We expect invoices from the OPP and the municipality, and we will sort out the cost recovery mechanisms as we move along, because we're in, you know, pretty early days of this from a financial recovery perspective. And we believe that we won't receive invoices from the RCMP. And we are working with the federal government currently on the grant. We already have, I think the board is aware of the grant line that was associated with special events that we get annually. So there's already that conversation going on in terms of recovering additional funding through that process. So as I mentioned, it's early days, but we are tracking every cost, and we will bring that as part of our update, our financial update back to the board. I believe it's in March or April.
And finally, do we have an average cost per day, an estimate of what it's costing us?
Yes, so I have, as of yesterday, the total cost that we had tracked, and it's important to note that these are recorded costs, so not all overtime, for example, would be yet recorded, and other items would be trickling in. So we're at 14.130539 million, so 14.1 million. That does not include the RCMP costs if they were to invoice us. So that's for the OPS costs plus forecasted costs for the OPP and municipalities and all OPS costs. So that works out to about 785,000 per day. And as additional officers join, those costs will be going up. So that was what we tallied as of yesterday.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Sueda. Interim Chief Bell, I think we should clarify in terms of the resources that, we're pretty happy with how they're flowing into Ottawa now, and that more are coming, and it's making a huge difference. But I don't want to leave the impression that after we made that ask last Sunday or Monday, whenever it was, that those resources came in the way we expected, because they were very slow. And I think we just have to be very clear with the public that, yeah, we're doing really well now, and we can see that we're at a turning point, but that was not initially the case. So if you could just confirm that.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification, Chair Deans. Absolutely. We made the ask about a week ago, and it's taken time through planning and resourcing to actually get those boots on the ground in Ottawa. We are not at the 1,800 number yet. We haven't seen that realized, but we continue to work with our partners in the OPP and the RCMP to make that a real fact in our city. So what we have seen is an increase, a steady flow of bodies into our operation that are deployable, but it was not immediate, as you indicated.
And would it be fair to say that the escalation of resources into this community for assistance with this occupation came about at the same time as the integrated command new structure was put in place?
So I think it's fair to say that the integrated command center that we've established with the OPP and the RCMP has been of great benefit for us to track the resources we have, allocate the resources that we need, and bring them into the city. I don't think it is because of that, but what it has done is has added capabilities to the operation for us to be able to bring resources in, properly deploy them towards efforts that we are undertaking to end the occupation.
Thank you for that, Interim Chief Bell. Member Meehan.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Deputy Chief. I guess the question is, I think, for a lot of folks in the city who are really beside themselves, what's going to change now? When are we going to see action? And I don't expect you to give us a detailed schedule, but when can we expect those rigs and the pickup trucks and some of the paraphernalia that are downtown? When can we expect that to be action to begin to move that out?
So it's as I indicated early on, we won't lay out our operational plans in a public forum. We will brief the board, as is our responsibility, in an in-camera session at the appropriate time. What I can tell you is there is absolutely a plan that has been developed through our partners at the OPP and RCMP to have an integrated approach and response to ultimately end the occupation in our streets. So that plan continues to be refined and developed and exists. And when is the appropriate time, we will brief the board on the execution of that plan.
Okay. We saw in Windsor, when the Emergencies Act was announced by the Premier, the authorities down at the bridge sent out flyers to all the people who are protesting and blockading the bridge. And it laid out the penalties that were going to be, meted out if the protesters did not leave. And that information, I think, did a good job of informing people and encouraging them to leave. Are we going to prepare something similar here? Because we know that a lot of the people who are occupying are getting information not necessarily from mainstream media. They don't know exactly if, in fact, the federal measures that we're going to bring in, they don't know about what that actually means. They don't know about the Emergencies Act. Will we have a flyer that's going to go out to everybody to spell out, you could lose your rig, you could lose the insurance on your rig, you could ultimately, you may not get a mortgage if you stay here. Will we be doing something similar to that so they know exactly what they're facing if they remain here?
So what I can let you know, and I'll turn it over to Trish Ferguson to top up on anything that she wants to once I'm finished. What I can let you know is from day one of the occupation, we've let people know jeopardy that they have around this. We've gathered information around who is here so that at the ultimate end of this, we can actually apply jeopardy. There can be penalties associated with the illegal occupation in our streets. We continue to work, the commanders that worked with the OPP and the RCMP in Windsor, we have access to and we continue to rely on in order to build and develop our plan. We've been clear with the protesters through verbal communications, through Twitter, through mainstream media, through all of our communication channels. You cannot be in our streets. You need to leave our streets. We will continue to escalate that discussion and the ultimate enforcement of those directions until they are gone from our streets.
Okay. We're going into Family Day weekend here. The Rideau Centre has been closed for 2 weeks. People have been, forced to stay in their homes. There's going to be a lot of people who want to go downtown. I'm wondering, is there a plan to tackle some of the blockades that are keeping the Rideau Centre from opening? I know that there's, about 30 vehicles at Rideau and Sussex. If that occupation was moved out, then perhaps the Rideau Centre could actually open. Are you looking at prioritizing, some of the areas that are impeding, businesses and people from accessing their places of work and business?
So we continue to understand the pressures that all of the blockades cause on our downtown core and the extreme challenges it is creating for our residents, the safety concerns, the security concerns within their neighborhoods. We know there are some pressure points like Rideau and Sussex, and we continue to talk to the demonstrators there, have discussions to negotiate their way from that area, ultimately out of the city, that will ultimately end in us intervening with a removal of them from our streets. We continue to work on that. And as I indicated before, as part of the operational plan, we will brief the board in camera on how we plan to move ahead when that time is correct.
Okay. I appreciate that. Do you have a timetable? Off the record, or
Wow. So here's one of the challenges. We're not off the record here. We're in a
I know.
meeting.
It's an old term. It's an old term, but I mean, just say yes or no. Is there a timetable?
We have an absolute plan on how we wish to move ahead to end the occupation of our streets.
Okay. Back in 2014, when we had the terrorist attack on Parliament Hill, we saw a surge of Mounties come in to reinforce the parliamentary precinct. Is there any plan like that in the works this time?
So we, as I've indicated a couple times, that we continue to work with our RCMP and OPP partners. As Chair Deans rightfully pointed out, we saw a trickle of resources come in the early days. We're increasingly seeing our access to resources grow over the days as we engage in the integrated planning in our integrated command center. There is nothing that I've been told, nothing that leads me to believe that we don't have everything but absolute coordination and cooperation with both the RCMP and the OPP to release resources for us to get these people out of our streets.
Okay, I know that you answered the question about resources, but the former chief asked for 1,800 bodies to come in. Are we anywhere close to that? Are we getting close to that? Is that still the target?
So as Deputy Ferguson indicated, we're not going to release operational numbers for safety concern and for operational concerns. That's a standard practice for us and makes even more sense in circumstances like we are currently in. What I can tell you is we continue to receive resources. There is unified reporting on the number of resources that we have that is sent to our command team, to the OPP and the RCMP executive, so that everyone has line of sight on the resources that are in our city from all of the different jurisdictions. We continue to see a day-over-day increase in those, and as we finalize plans, we will continue to see that grow over the coming days.
Deputy Chief, thank you. That's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Member Mann. And I think some of what you're hearing here is the real desire of this board to hear more details of a plan than obviously you can share in public. But I would ask for an in-camera briefing of that plan, because we need to be very satisfied where we're going at this point on this plan. So we can work that out, Interim Chief Bell, and we'll move to Member Smallwood.
Thank you, Chair. And I wanted to join my fellow board members in firstly thanking former Chief Slowly for his efforts. He's been through some really horrendous times. COVID and this occupation have been extraordinarily challenging. We've never seen times like this in the city before. So I really want to do say thank you. It's been tough. And I also wanted to thank those who have stepped forward, Acting Chief Bell and Deputy Trish Ferguson and the entire command team and the members, because I think we'll look back on this, and I've said to many people, you'll put this on your CV. All of us will put it on our CV. They will teach courses about this. They will talk about this for a very long time to come. And everybody is second guessing why somebody didn't do something. And what I can say for sure is it certainly isn't because I've never seen anybody who doesn't have their entire body geared towards get a resolution to this. We all really, really, really want to do that. And I think you've seen some of the questions from the board members. There's a saying for board members that our job is nose in and fingers out. We can ask questions, but we can't tell you what to do. And we also, we can't expect you, because all we can do is ask about operational matters, but we can't expect you to tell us certain things, and we can't direct you how to do them. So we do appreciate that. But that, as you've seen, that doesn't stop us from asking the questions. And I think it's helpful for the public to see, even though sometimes we know you're not going to be able to answer it, at least we do our best to try to dig away at it to see what we can find out. I did have one question, which I don't think is operational, but I just, Deputy Chief Ferguson, you mentioned that there was 360, I think you mentioned, I'm not sure, I wrote it down, 360 vehicles and 150 people downtown currently. Did I get that wrong?
So the figure was 360 vehicles, and in the overnight hours, there were 150 people, protesters on the streets. So that's how we measure. We check to see how many people are on Parliament Hill, how many in the streets surrounding, and obviously that's a very fluid number, and then how many vehicles.
Because I was wondering if there were more vehicles than people, but I'm assuming then that there are actually 360 vehicles, perhaps with people, with or without people in them, and the overflow people are in the streets. And I noticed that. Now, one thing I wanted to confirm is just that when a vehicle, when a member of the convoy leaves, now I realize there's some question, some part of it you won't be able to answer, but I realize there's some negotiations that happen. But in general, when a convoy member leaves, they're not allowed to come back. Like we're not like they don't have some sort of pass that says you can come park here for whenever you want. Like I'm kind of assuming that if somebody were to leave, that we don't allow someone else to come. So the only movement that we've seen about vehicles was I guess an arrangement that X number of vehicles who are on residential streets would be allowed to move up to Wellington and the SJAM Parkway to get them out of the residential area. Would that be correct?
I apologize. Just had somebody come into my office. Could you?
You mean there's something going? There's something going on now.
I can answer the question. So, absolutely, there is no right of return or in and out pass for people in the area. We are actively working every minute of every day to limit the number of people within the footprint. And when we either negotiate them to leave or they do leave on their own accord, they are not allowed back, and there is no one that is allowed to come in and fill their space. And we've seen success in that over the last number of days. The numbers that we're reporting today are the smallest number of vehicles within the red zone footprint that we've had since the beginning of the occupation. We have more work to do, absolutely committed to do it, but we are seeing a decrease in numbers.
So I really appreciate that, because I think what the public wants to know, and I appreciate you can't tell us when are they all going to be gone, but I think what the public wants to know is every day it's getting better. There is hope. It is getting better. There are fewer. And I know I've been down there on many days, and before it was just shocking, the diesel in the air. I mean, it was sickening, and the tension that was in the air. So I'm really, really happy to see, and I really do appreciate the work and efforts of all the people involved in this. So thank you very much, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Smallwood. Member King.
Thank you, Chair. Under Section 4.1 of the Police Services Act, the municipality must provide adequate and effective policing concerning public order maintenance and emergency response. With all due respect, I have found the provisions of these services over the past 3 weeks to be wholly inadequate and ineffective. So, Interim Chief, on behalf of the residents of Ottawa, can you explain the inadequacy of the law enforcement efforts that we've seen during this siege?
So we've had multiple discussions in this forum about the challenges that we were seeing in this unprecedented demonstration in our city, and not only in our city, but in other jurisdictions across Ontario and across Canada. So the plans that we put in place are exactly that, to create public order and to make sure that our members of our community feel safe and secure in the city in which they live. We continue to build capacities through our partnership with the OPP and RCMP to have the capacity to take our streets back. We have absolutely developed the capacities and have developed the plan to actually go into and execute and affect that return of our streets. So when you ask about adequate and effective policing, I did answer that question earlier. I do believe that we have provided adequate and effective policing, and we will continue to support the community's need to feel safety and security in the place they live while we remove these unlawful and illegal demonstrators from our streets.
Well, Interim Chief, I would beg to differ with you, and I'm certain many residents would also beg to differ on that. We've seen, a scenario where the lack of police action has been inexplicable for many of our residents. We've seen the idling trucks, we've seen the idling generators, we've seen the assembly of jumbotrons, bouncy castles, barbecues. Most dangerously, we've seen fuel dumps full of gas, diesel, and propane canisters. People are being harassed in the streets. They can't go into stores. They're unable to enjoy any semblance of a normal life. Supply encampments remain in operation, and residents have now taken on the dangerous work of enforcement and resistance in their own hands. So I have to say that I don't see that effective and adequate policing here. We've heard from others, including the Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness, who is a former Toronto police chief, who has also said the lack of police action has been inexplicable. And I'm saying, as a member of the Police Services Board, that the lack of police action has been inexplicable. So, Interim Chief, even if there has been inadequate resources to address this crisis, why haven't there been the basic probative enforcement exercises to address the most blatant violations of the law? You know, maybe en masse, it's going to take time to deal with the situation. But there have been many situations, many instances where action could have been taken. So I'm just wondering, why weren't actions taken? As example, you know, we see the corner of Rideau and Sussex. We see the War Memorial. Why haven't specific actions been taken in terms of those incidents?
So what I'll start with is there's already been committed to a review of what led up to the point that we're at today around this demonstration. We welcome that. What I can sit here and commit to you is a substantive plan forward, actions forward to end the demonstration within our city. We know that over the past number of weeks, several of, if not all of those safety concerns that you've identified have existed within our streets. They have been completely unacceptable. We have, from the early days, identified that we needed the resources to be able to access to safely stop these demonstrations in our city. The board, through Chair Deans, the council, through the mayor, have actually advocated for us to receive those resources. And in those resources, in turn, we've been able to bring in partners from the OPP and RCMP to work collaboratively together to build a substantive, definite plan that is properly and adequately resourced to ultimately end this occupation. We will continue to work towards that plan to end the occupation in our streets so that we see no more of those unsafe activities.
Well, with the new integrated coordination amongst agencies, if there has been an accelerated tempo of incoming resources, when will we see an accelerated level of enforcement in order to address the illegal occupation?
So I think over the past number of days, you've already seen an increase in the enforcement activities of our members in a more coordinated and strategic way that is directed towards ending the occupation. As we continue to roll out the plan to end the occupation, you will see an ongoing increase in that.
And will the integrated response of multiple law enforcement agencies be driven by a specific plan? And when will that plan be put into place?
So again, as is the responsibility of myself as interim chief, I will brief the board on that plan, that operational plan, as we roll it out in the time that is required to me prior to doing that. That will need to be done in camera because I would not want to actually provide operational comments in an open public forum about ongoing or future police operations.
Thank you for that. Notwithstanding misinformation and disinformation that is floating around the entire ecosystem, are you aware of any complicity by sworn members with illegal occupiers?
So misinformation and disinformation has been a challenge and a threat to this entire operation as we've worked through it. That being said, what I can clearly state now is any information that we have received that there could be complicity by any of our members or anybody associated with this police service, we are actively investigating it to come to a resolution or come to a culmination in terms of discipline that would be associated with that. As the interim chief, I could tell you anybody that is supporting this demonstration has no place in this police service and will be dealt with accordingly.
Interim Chief, have there been any illegal occupiers who have been charged with unlawful assembly as defined in Section 63 of the Criminal Code?
To this point, no, there has been none of the occupiers who have been charged with that specific legislation, but there have been several members that have been charged with other criminal code violations.
And I have some more focus-pointed questions here about what legal advice led OPS to allow trucks to move freely outside of the designated city truck routes. As we know, Member Neerman had pointed out R versus Clayton and Brown versus Durham region, which clearly states that there is authority for police services to restrict vehicular access into and within the city. So I want to know, what legal advice was provided to do that, and what decision is going to be made in the future to actually ensure that this authority is applied, because it's obvious that roadblocks can be utilized in this scenario.
So what I can let you know again is we absolutely encourage and will support all reviews of the actions that have been taken up to this point, so that we can learn from what mistakes may have been made or what laws we need to advocate to have tightened, sharpened, or changed moving ahead to avoid a situation like this. From a forward look, we are continuing to work with our partners in the Integrated Command Center, as well as legal experts, to look at what lawful means we can use to keep people from attending the downtown core, to add to the numbers of the demonstration, and lawfully and expeditiously remove the unlawful occupiers that are in our streets today.
When was the demonstration now illegal occupation declared illegal? And if so, when did this take place?
So I'm going to ask you to refine your question. I don't understand exactly what you're seeking.
So this went to perceivably being a protest to an illegal occupation. Was the demonstration declared illegal? And if so, when did this take place?
So I'll have to get you the specific point at which we changed our view on it from a protest to an illegal occupation. I just don't have that right now.
Okay. An additional question would be, when was the first request to the federal and provincial governments for resources? When did that take place, and on what date? And you might have to get back to me on that as well.
Yeah, so I'll have to get that specific date when official requests were made. I can tell you that specifically around the OPP, there was resource supports that were given to us in the very early days. And shortly after that, resource supports that were provided by the RCMP. They have been partners with us through the very early days of this illegal occupation. But I will have to get and review our documentation to see when the first official requests were made to the federal and provincial government.
And what were the enforcement tactics once the situation did alter from a protest to an occupation?
So again, that will be encompassed in the review that will occur immediately after this. We will fully cooperate and support that review that was called for by City Council, so that we can look at steps and stages as to when different mechanisms and levers were pulled to both see how we could have been better and see how we would change our practices and tactics moving ahead to never have this occur again.
And has any ultimatum ever been given to the occupiers? Have we issued any notices to them about the illegal activity that they've been engaged in? And if we did, what were their consequences?
So I would start with the notice. There isn't a time that I've come before this board, that I've become before council or before media, that we haven't stated that this is an illegal occupation of our streets and these people need to leave. The support of that and the enforcement of that is what is centered around that plan that's being developed and implemented by our integrated team. So there has been no doubt that these people are involved in an illegal occupation of our streets. Through the support of this board, through the support of council, we are now seeing the relief that we need through resource supports, planning supports, in order to be able to bring it finally to an end.
Well, I will just leave us with this final thought that we've heard very clearly from the residents of Ottawa, and that is mirrored by council, and I'm sure this body, this board. We need a more proactive response, resources, and most importantly, enforcement effort to really end this illegal occupation. That's what we need. And we need a very clear timeline. We need a plan. And we need to present that relatively quickly as possible to the residents of Ottawa so that we can get to a resolution of this situation that rightfully has really is undermining trust in our public institutions, that's undermining trust in everything that is occurring in the city, and is erasing the idea of normalcy in the city. We need to bring this city back to normal. And we'll continue to advocate for that and ask those questions because this is not acceptable. And people out there, and I agree with them, do not consider this adequate and effective policing. They want to see that restored, and they want to see results. And so we'll continue to ask those questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Member King. Member Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. And I'll just add to Councillor King's comments. I too want to see our city back, our residents with their lives back as soon as possible. I would like to thank past Chief Slowly for his work and leadership during a very challenging time. May I also thank you, Acting Chief Bell, the other members of the command team, and all of the OPS members for all that you have done and will be doing to end this occupation. And I was glad to hear that you as Acting Chief have shared that there is a plan and that we will receive that at an in-camera meeting. Can I expect that meeting in the next 24 to 48 hours?
So first of all, thanks for your comments, Member Johnson. We will be briefing the board on the plan at the most appropriate time prior to the commencement of it. I can't indicate when that would be because that would be part of the operations that we would be engaging in.
Okay, thank you. In terms of the incident command center that's been set up, have all three levels of government been updated on the incident command center? And has the decision-making process at the leadership level been reviewed and agreed upon by the OPP, the RCMP, and the OPS?
So Deputy Chief Ferguson has been actively engaged in developing and building that incident command center. So I'll turn that question over to her.
Thank you, Member Johnson, for the question. I can tell you that as we are doing now and have throughout this process, they are updating their boards and their supervisors. So both commissioners have been on daily calls with updates with their members. And I think it's suffice to say that all levels of government are aware that there is a plan and that they have been contributing to it.
Okay, and then my other question was, has the decision-making process at the leadership level been agreed and upon by the three different groups, the OPP, the RCMP, and the OPS?
Yes, they have. Sorry, I omitted to answering that.
It's okay.
In the command structure, there are levels across the board at which decisions are made, operational decisions are made, and it is the people who have the best line of sight, so not necessarily the commissioner, the chief, or the commissioner of the RCMP who would be making those decisions, but they would be advised of them. and they provide strategic direction to them. So that is happening.
Okay, thank you. And then Acting Chief Bell, what resources are still needed in your estimation to end the Ottawa siege? Are you able to identify what you still need?
So again, based on the need to not disclose all of our operational tactics in a public forum, what I can tell you is the resources that we are requiring to implement and execute on this plan are being coordinated and arranged through our incident command center. There will be more and different resources that we'll need that I won't go into specific details on what they are in a public forum, but they are being identified and arranged to be accessed.
Okay, thank you. So I would like to see the communications improved on the actions being taken. And so I repeat, on the actions being taken to resolve this occupation. Acting Chief Bell, I request you to update the board on a twice daily basis until this crisis is resolved. Can you confirm that, please, that you'll do that?
Maybe I'm going to step in here. We're in the middle of a crisis. I really don't feel comfortable as the chair of this board asking Deputy Chief Bell or interim Chief Bell to update the board twice a day. We have a process in place that this board has agreed to, and we will commit to doing that.
May I just clarify, Chair, the process that we've agreed to make sure I'm clear on that.
We have agreed to. Any questions that the board members have will be bundled through the board office and forwarded to the interim chief. We will have at least a once a week meeting. And if there are changes that we need to consider in a more fluid manner, then I will call a special meeting.
Yeah. I do think, given that what I'm hearing from Ottawa residents that I've been speaking to, from the healthcare providers I've been speaking to, that they're looking for more action from the board. So given we're hearing that and how critical it is, I ask again that the board be updated by Acting Chief Bell. These do not have to be long updates. If it's the following two actions have been taken, that's fine. But I do request that the board receive these updates. And I think that we're hearing from Ottawa, and I'm seeing on Twitter that they want more from the board. And I want to do more, and I want to show more oversight. So I again, my request to Acting Chief Bell.
Member Johnson, I have to support, or I will support what Chair Deans has indicated here. I absolutely agree. There isn't a person on this board, in this building, that isn't looking to quickly, effectively, safely resolve this occupation and get these people out of our streets. That is all we are working towards. We have, through our integrated command center, increased our communications, looked at how we have better, more refined messages on the actions that are being taken. But what I can tell you is when we attend, and I think it's important under the framework that's been set up through the board, when we attend meetings like this, it takes us away from operationally responding to the issue that's in front of us. And at the end of the day, the most important thing we're going to do is operationally respond to this and get these people out of our streets. So although I absolutely support having the most seamless communication we can with the board to provide them updates, I can tell you that twice daily briefings would be extremely taxing and would be very difficult to manage and would absolutely take us away from an operational response.
can you see a level more than once a week that could, satisfy that the board is doing the oversight that Ottawa wants us to do? Can you see something different or something more than that?
So I'm absolutely willing to work with the board to look at an enhanced communications process if that's what the board desires through Chair Deans. We can look at how we can support that. But what I would ask is that we don't have more in-person meetings where we take the entire command structure away from responding to the incident.
Right. Okay. That's helpful, actually. So, all right. And that's all of my questions. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Member Johnson. And just before I start my comments, I just want to say that, as much as we want to provide that oversight role, and we are expected to, I don't want to create the false impression with the public that this board has more authority in this than we have. That has been a problem already with the public, who happen to believe that the board can direct these operations and should be directing these operations. And I can tell you, I have an inbox full of people giving me advice that under the Act, under the Police Services Act, we cannot do. So I want to caution the board not to create the impression at all with the public that ours is more than an oversight role. It's an oversight role. We have to make sure that we have the resources that they need. We have to make sure they have a plan. We have to ask those questions, but we cannot direct the chief. And I don't want to leave the impression with the public we can, because that is not the case. And I, like all of you, and like every single person, I'm sure, in the city, wants to see an expeditious and peaceful, safe end to this occupation where no one is harmed. We all want the same thing. I want it as much as anybody else, believe me. We have to put a structure in place that we believe will get this job done as expeditiously as possible. And I guess, Chief Bell, we're all getting to our breaking point. Maybe I am too, but one of my frustrations has been when we expect action, we don't see it. It's a problem. We expected Coventry Road. We sort of got half the job done, and then there seemed to be a backing away. It took way too long in Confederation Park. This weekend, when we said that we were going to treat the protesters, more strongly than we have in the past, we had a chaotic carnival on Parliament Hill. I tell you, I wanted to go up there and pop that damn hot tub myself and unplug the bouncy castle. And I couldn't understand why we weren't doing just those things that were poking the fingers in the eye of our house, of Parliament, of our democracy, and of our city. And so, if there's some frustration spilling over, it's, okay, now we're getting the resources. This board is working very hard behind the scenes, and I want to assure the public that that is true, to put a new structure in place that will bring about a peaceful end to this illegal occupation as soon as possible. But I think what the public needs to hear today, what I as the chair of this board need to hear today, is that there is going to be stepped up enforcement, and that the disruptive, ridiculous, annoying behavior that has persisted is going to be addressed in a meaningful and expeditious fashion. That's what we want.